Welcome everyone. So my name is JJ. I'm a customer success specialist. And if this is the first time you hear my voice, then it means that probably you missed the previous session of SecureX that is called Get Started with SecureX, where I covered in technical detail how SecureX works. And I invite you watching that session as well. And I will share the link of that session in a bit. But first, I have some minutes to provide a short introduction of SecureX, and I hope that you enjoy it. So when it comes to famous marketing quotes, probably this is one of the most famous ones, which says that people don't want to buy a quarter-inch drill, they want a quarter-inch hole. Now, another problem is that there is friction in the process. So the tremendous task of coordinating and agreeing with all the different areas, this is more evident as your organization grows. In large organizations where there is a team who handles the tickets, I don't know, the network changes is a different team, security is a different team. So this friction causes delays and as well inefficiencies. And finally, the resources are always limited. There are always constraints in this area, not only because sometimes getting the talent nowadays is really difficult, but also because you want to utilize such talent in the most efficient way, automating as much as possible repetitive tasks. Now, with this in mind, with these challenges in mind, we have designed SecureX, right? We bring simplicity by producing a platform that is open, that can be integrated with Cisco products and also third parties. And we bring visibility with a unified solution, single dashboard where you can access your different products. And we make it very efficient, right, by integrating as well automation into the mix. So we predefined workflows for you, but also we leave the door open so you can create new workflows as complex as needed. Now, you might be asking, all this sounds great. How exactly this is implemented. So in short, these are the different areas of SecureX, the ones that you see here. We have, if you look down, we have the integrations section where we let you onboard and connect new products. We have the ribbon in SecureX and also the single sign-on feature that lets you having SecureX, the ribbon, for example, always is connected to your Cisco products, meaning we brought SecureX into our Cisco security portfolio in the ribbon. So you have like a window when you can communicate back and forth with SecureX. We also simplify the login experience, one credentials for multiple security products. We have as well the dashboards. These SecureX dashboards are customizable and they will bring you insights from all the products that you have connected in your environment. We also have threat response. That threat response helps you to quickly hunt for threats in your environment and take actions right from there, right? So within 5 minutes, you can investigate all the integrated products, whether your network, for example, is compromised or your network is vulnerable against some problem, right? And you can, if you find some problem, then you can take action right from there without leaving SecureX. Now, another piece is that SecureX orchestration, and this is our automation piece. This is a low-code, drag and drop graphical interface that lets you connecting flows and automate them. For example, I want my firewall to block a host if we find that that host executed a malware, and we want as well to open a ticket, maybe and inform our response team via a message in the chat, and all of that can be connected, glued together with SecureX orchestration. And finally, device insights provides you an inventory of all your endpoints, meaning that you might have different products, right? Like Umbrella, like Duo, like Meraki, or maybe Microsoft Intune, and among others, right? And all of these products have some knowledge of the users. They might have information about the operating system, about their IP address, the username, the MAC address, their vulnerabilities, and so on. Well, Device Insights gets all this information and merge them together and provides an inventory of such assets with the respective users behind them. And this is what you see is a detailed view of SecureX, all the different areas of the product. And remember, we came from the business objectives into the challenges and now into the solutions, right? And now in the next slide, we're going to explain you how you can get SecureX, right? Well, SecureX is a cloud solution. You get it by going to security.cisco.com, and if you're entitled, meaning that you are currently having Cisco security products within the products that can be integrated in SecureX. And for a list of such entitlements, just please visit the link on that QR code. And if you have any of these products, then SecureX comes at no extra cost. Now, moving on. So I was talking about the different integrations. Okay, so we are expanding our list of integrated products all the time, and this slide might not contain all of them. For the latest and greatest list of integrations, please visit the resources I am sharing here. But the takeaway is that since we wanted to have as many Cisco and third-party integrated in SecureX, we created a team specifically at Cisco that is just doing that. Right? It's just onboarding new products, Cisco or otherwise, and but also they are as well documenting how to integrate it. So it's open, it's documented, and it's public. So also we see vendors creating their integrations as well. And one misconception that I often hear is from customers is that they say, hey, my product is not here, so I won't bother with SecureX, right? But let me tell you the truth, no? The reality is that if your product supports any sort of API, REST API, then it can be integrated within SecureX with the orchestration piece that I explained you earlier. So we will focus the rest of the session showing you exactly that, right? What are the things that you can do with orchestration? But before that, in our next slide, please, I will share you some quotes just to close my section. And this second quote, I bring it all the time in my presentations because I like it a lot, and it shows you the essence of SecureX. So you remember the drill and the holes quote earlier. So this customer is saying, SecureX allows our small IT group to look like a large full-time security team. So this is the value unlocked for this customer. And we are looking forward to know which is the value that SecureX can provide to you. And as I promised, here is the link in the next one of the session, Get Started with SecureX. This one, where I cover more in depth SecureX architecture and more technical topics there. And also in that session, I provide a free workflow as well, so you can start doing some automation on your own. And with that, thank you so much. And I want to open the stage to Sam, who will help you visualizing some of these outcomes that we discussed. So thank you, Sam, all yours.
Lovely. Thank you, JJ. Hopefully everyone can hear me. So my name is Sam Strachan. I'm a senior architect with the security orchestration team, and we are a team of software engineers sitting in CX, bridging the gap between what Cisco products do and what customers want. One of the services we as well as building kind of custom software in a kind of traditional software model, we also have a few SecureX offerings, one of which is the art of the possible, which is what I'm going to talk about today. Now, the point of the art of the possible is to implement workflows for customers using SecureX orchestration, solving incident response requirements. So before I kind of dig into the art of the possible and try and explain a little bit about what it does, I'm just going to reiterate some of the challenges that JJ has already articulated, but just maybe through a slightly different lens. So incident response is is difficult because there's such a fragmented security market. There are so many different products, there are so many different feeds, but it's also because of the difficulty in attracting and retaining security talent. And if that security talent is constantly having to work through boring, repetitive tasks and expending quite a lot of effort with the risk of making errors and the outcome of a reduced consistency of quality, then overall the business and the security teams are facing increased risk and increased cost. So what we seek to do with Art of the Possible is mitigate that and solve customer problems. So I'm going to look at the art of the possible through from a couple of different perspectives. And first of all, I'm going to look at some case studies and look at what it is that we did to help our customers and the various outcomes. But then I'm going to look at it from the point of view of how we did it and the process that we followed. And I think through those two perspectives, we get a much better kind of three-dimensional model, if you like, of what it is that Art of the Possible achieves. So first, we worked with a healthcare customer, and they had a feed of suspicious files, and the SOC team was inundated with various file endpoint detections, and each detection took time and effort to go through, with the risk of missing things, whether it's kind of going through file names, getting file hashes, checking various different threat feed sources. And the result of all of this was that it was not only time consuming, but there were quite a lot of false positives, which resulted in more wasted time. What we did was run through our Art of the Possible process with the customer, which essentially involves asking lots of questions and listening. And the result of this was an automated retrieval and analysis of all of the detections. And by being able to automate this process, we were very quickly able to deal with removing so many of the false positives and doing a lot of the heavy lifting and the time-consuming, error-prone tasks, just being able to get rid of those so that the talented team that the customer did have was able to spend time on the work that they were trained to do and were effective at. So the outcomes were greater consistency, the exact same triage methodology to every single suspicious file running through all of the process, reduced mean time to remediation because so much of it was automated, is no longer kind of manually logging into websites and looking things up and copying and pasting things with the risk of leaving out a couple of characters here and there. And then a reduced load on the SOC team. So optimizing efficiency and productivity. But we also went through a very similar process with phishing. And in many senses, it's actually the same problem. The SOC was inundated with something like 1,000 daily phishing reports. So that's about 30,000 a month. And it's just an inbox, and we have something. There's something similar at many different organizations, but there's some poor human at the other end of this inbox, which is having to go through and deal with it. And 1,000 messages a day is about 50 an hour or thereabouts. And unless you're doing those 50 in just over a minute each, you're going to be getting behind. And that, sure enough, was what was happening at this customer. So the SOC team was triaging and trying to go through and look at the problems. So they might be looking at the headers of the message, subjects of the message, as well as links that are in there and file attachments, taking file hashes. And despite all of this process, there were still people being phished at the customer. So we asked the question, what is the current process? We listened and we automated this process so that it was possible just to be able to go through an inbox and very quickly uh, identify messages which were absolutely fine and could just be ignored versus those that needed further analysis, checking against virus total, threat intelligence, and so on, including content and the email attachments. And then being able to raise a ticket in ServiceNow for further analysis along with some suggested remediation. Again, the outcomes were greater consistency, reclaiming headcount effectively. So rather than reducing the headcount, what it meant was that suddenly people had time to be able to deal with these problems. And then, of course, reducing the mean time to detection. Because the automation just, instead of spending 20 minutes on looking at an email, it was possible in some cases for the email to be identified within 5 seconds as absolutely fine, and sometimes maybe up to 30 seconds if there was a further problem. The thing that's in common with both of these case studies is a large amount of data that is coming in that needs some form of analysis, and being able to work through very quickly through automation and triage that and result in an outcome in some form of ticketing system that a human can then interact with and work on the genuinely problematic issues. So looking at the same, looking at both of those case studies, but through the angle of the process, I think the first thing that I would like to focus on is the workshop, which happens early on. So after we've engaged with customers and we've all met a few times, we meet with the customer ideally to document a number of processes that are problematic, that either spending too much time, there's too much friction, there's too much risk around it. It might be the result of some form of compliance audit. And then by documenting those processes, let's say there are 3 or 4 of them, we can reevaluate them and look at what is actually happening and view it through the lens of automation, so that we can maybe take some kind of Pareto approach and deal with the 80% that's time consuming and solve that problem. But I think that one of the most interesting and valuable things about the workshop is not just going through all of that, but that it unites the customer team. So one of the things JJ mentioned earlier on was around the friction between various different teams and tools, and perhaps a lack of understanding with teams working in silos. But this brings in maybe finance, maybe compliance, maybe the security operational team, maybe the network teams, and it brings lots of people together so that they're all understanding the challenges that everyone else is facing and why certain things might be slow. And that is enormously valuable. So if we zoom out from there and look at the workshop in the context of the whole process, we see that the workshop is just one small line item. So I won't go through all of this in detail, but we have a kick-off, meet and greet, say hello, work out what we're going to do, and assign single points of contact. We will distribute a discovery questionnaire. The point of the questionnaire is to allow us to prepare for the workshop so that we can hit the ground running. It may be that customers are using different tools than we're used to. So lots of people use ServiceNow for ticketing, but it might be that it's some lesser known ticketing system that we need to do some research on APIs and so on, so that we can be more effective in the workshop. After the workshop, we create some output documentation that says, this is what we talked about, these are all of the different workflows, this is how they work, this is who does what. And then it's down to you, the customer, to choose a workflow and say, which one of these do we want to do? And again, the motivation behind that decision can be based on budget, it can be based on risk, it can be based on the number of people impacted, but a decision is made. And then once that is done, we run through the rest of the software development process, which is documenting it, going into detail, further research, design, review meetings, and then we'll have a solution document sign off. We'll build do our own internal system testing, and then we'll work with customers to perform integration and user testing to check that everything works, and then we deploy. So that's looking at, so that's what we do and how we do it. So I'm now going to look at a sample workflow. So the problem that this particular customer had, again, was a large quantity of threats detected, but in this case it was with threat grid or malware analytics, I think it might be called now. And the customer wanted to automatically remediate these problems in Umbrella, so to block problematic domains. So far, so standard. But what they also wanted was to be able to introduce a human step into the workflow in ServiceNow. So here we go. This is the end result of this, and you can see that there's just a we used a development name for the name of this particular workflow in the screen grab here, but a user is now in Malware Analytics able to right click or to get a context menu for a particular domain, and we can see highlighted there that they're able to run the block domain workflow. What this does underneath the hood is execute the workflow that's built in SecureX orchestration. So while our team does do a lot of kind of high code software engineering, we also do low code in SecureX orchestration. And we can see on the right hand side, we've got a visual flow representation of the various different steps which are going through here. And the very first thing that happens when someone right clicks or context clicks on a domain is that we can see that we're going to get an authentication token. We extract that token and the expiration date. We set some core header variables in our context, and then we can call a web service for ServiceNow, which creates a ticket in there with the various different information that we've retrieved from Malware Analytics. At this point, a user in ServiceNow will be presented with the opportunity to approve or reject this domain block. And there's nothing too exciting here. It's just a screen that's in ServiceNow. It may be that certain custom items need to be done, or this could just be a standard ticket. Then once something has been approved, then a task is created to go ahead and fulfill the block within Umbrella. And once that happens, we have another workflow that's running in SecureX orchestration. Now, for those of you that are familiar with ServiceNow development, it would of course be possible to create a webhook built in ServiceNow, which would then call SecureX orchestration and initiate a workflow that way. That wasn't an option for this particular implementation. So what we did was built another workflow here, which polls ServiceNow, I think every 10 minutes. And again, we can see that the first few steps are the same, so that we retrieve an authentication token, we extract that token and the expiration date, and then we store that. The next thing we do is we query ServiceNow for a list of all of the tasks which have been approved, so that these are the domains that we know that we need to block in Umbrella. And then down into the detail of what's happening, we're translating those tasks and putting them into a table. And then for each of those tasks, we update the status so that they are in progress, and then convert the domain list, which is in there, to another table, which can be subsequently read. The final step of the process is for each of those domain items, we generate an Umbrella event and submit that to Umbrella to automate the domain block. At the very final stage, we mark the task as complete. And this shows a relatively small pair of workflows, but that are integrating three separate systems with a human in between that is the result, the culmination, if you like, of of all of this process. And the customer was extremely happy because it just simplified and automated what was otherwise a very time-consuming process. So at this point, I'd like to conclude. I believe Matt might have put launched the survey at this point, so feel free to go and have a look at that. I've lost my screen focus, bear with me. So to recap, the art of the possible is principally around implementing automation. It does so through a remote workshop, identifying current and desired incident response procedures. We give expert recommendation as to what we think that should happen, and ultimately implement the workflows. This results typically in either mean time to detection, but also mean time to remediation, and does so through automation. It improves the quality and the consistency, and ultimately gives more time back to what are typically very overworked teams. And we've got an example timeline here at the bottom. It's always difficult to judge how long software projects last, and it's in particular because it's sometimes difficult to get everyone to meet. But typically this will work across it's usually about 10 weeks to a quarter to implement. But having said that, I have seen it done in as little as 3 weeks. Not that I would recommend that, because that was fairly stressful for everyone involved. So just to walk through what Art of the Possible is not and what the checklists might be. So if we remember some of the one of JJ's slides earlier on, there's the various different components of SecureX. Art of the Possible is about implementing the orchestration part of it. It's not about installing, configuring, setting up integrations, or anything like that. It is also not really about designing new incident response processes. It is about taking existing processes and maybe optimizing them or streamlining them. So we would be looking for customers to have a strong sense of the sorts of things that they want to achieve through automation before starting this process. Finally, the integration touchpoints must be available in the cloud, because the automation with SecureX runs in the cloud, so it's difficult to get back into customer networks. It is possible to do that through relays, but that would not form part of Art of the Possible. The reason being, Art of the Possible is a fixed cost implementation, and we need to put some guardrails on that so that we don't don't blow the budget. So there's no on-prem integrations. There's nothing that isn't a REST API. We can, while it's possible to do shelling into SSH or what have you, or run SOAP or netconf or LDAP, that's not immediately possible in SecureX orchestration. So we would be looking for a custom engagement for that.